Okay, so it's a cold midnight. There are not many things that would get me away from a nice warm fire on a cold midnight night. Scotland's on the telly. That's maybe one thing that would get me out of the house. But honestly, the opportunity to come here and acknowledge the terrific work that Big Shouter has done in this area it's a real privilege to be here. It's a real privilege to acknowledge a genuine effort and a genuinely successful effort to change the lives of people in East Renfrewshire. I used to work as a surgeon. I was a surgeon in the Royal Infirmary in Glasgow for many years. And when I first went to work there, I could not believe how sick people were. People in the East End of Glasgow were much sicker than I was used to. And I used to talk to them about what was making them sick. And I talked to them about smoking. Why don't you stop smoking? You know the amount of smoking you're taking will give you cancer. And they used to answer me, often you would get the answer, if you're going to get cancer, you're going to get cancer. You might as well enjoy yourself. And the thing that came across to me very clearly was they did not think they controlled their health and well-being. It was some mythical thing out there. It was fate that would determine were they going to get sick or not. They were not in control of their lives. Somebody else was. Something else was. And you would talk to them about alcohol and you get the same thing. I saw people, there was a guy I got to know really well. He would come into hospital regularly with a condition called acute pancreatitis. Acute pancreatitis is incredibly painful and it can kill you. And it's inflammation in an organ in your stomach and it's caused often by alcohol. And this guy would come in regularly with this horrible condition and I would go and see him. And when you asked him how much he drank, he would tell you. But the really interesting thing was he made his own drink. He had a distillery in his front room in Easterhouse. And he used to make his own vodka. Well, he called it vodka. I don't know what it tasted like. Every time he came in, he brought me a bottle of it. There you are, Doc, straight down the sink. And this guy had absolutely no sense that he could take decisions about his life that would transform his life. And the reason was he felt hopeless. He felt his life had no meaning. He didn't have a job. He had no expectation of anything positive in his future. And all of that made me begin to realise that there needed to be a different way of helping people be in control. Instead of having social workers and so on doing things to people, instead of having the housing officers going round Easterhouse and so on chasing up unpaid rent, instead of having the system telling people what to do, the answer was have people be in control of their own lives. Help people discover the skills and the abilities that they had within themselves to help themselves and to help each other. And what we began to do was, we called the old way of doing things the deficits approach, looking at the problems people had and trying to fix them for them. And in doing so, you undermined their own sense of control. And we started talking about the assets approach. What are the assets that you have as a person? What are the skills that you don't know you have that you could turn on and become successful and move ahead? And we now know that when you unleash assets in people, they become healthier, they feel better about themselves, they're better able to help other people, they're more likely to succeed at school, they're more likely to succeed in jobs, they're more likely to succeed as parents in the future. So the whole move has been to try and get Scotland to stop thinking about the problems people have and start to think about awakening their own abilities to be in control of their lives. And over the past year, I've got to know quite well a guy called Paul Brannigan. Some of you might have seen Paul in a movie called The Angel Share. Great movie. If you haven't seen it, go and see it. The first half is quite violent, about gang fighting in Glasgow. The second half is all about kilts, whiskey and Brigadoon. And it's a really good feel-good movie at the end of the day. But it's about a young man who's caught up in gang violence, and he and his girlfriend have a baby, and he suddenly realises he has to change. And it's about how he manages to change his life and move up and move away from the gangs. That's Paul's story. I've got to know Paul quite well. Parents were drug addicts. He was, he was completely unable to be in control of his life. He tells me that when he was 7, he used to hide in the cloakroom at school because he couldn't bear to be in the classroom with other children. And he told me that he went back to school. STV were filming a documentary about him, and he went back to school for this documentary, and his teacher handed him some stuff that they'd found at school, and one of it was a poem Paul had written when he was age 9. And it was a really, really sad poem. It was all about how he felt worthless, how his other schoolmates didn't like him, and it was all because of his parents' drug habit. And he told me that years later he went to prison, and he said when he went into prison he put himself down as not being able to read or write. He'd completely forgotten how to read or write in the years between 9 and 16 when he went to prison. What kind of life are kids living out there that sort of thing can happen to? And then 2 prison officers helped Paul discover the assets he had within him. He was in the Angel's Share. He went to the Cannes Film Festival, told me all about having dinner with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. His new movie's out next month. He co-stars with Scarlett Johansson in this movie. He's just been sent a script from Disney to read that he might be in. This is a wee boy who could have been dead by now, but yet he was helped to discover the qualities that he had within him that made him an actor, that gave him an opportunity to be successful. All of us have those qualities within us. It's just a question of finding them. And the big shouter to me, when I discovered it, maybe you know the story of, I went down to London to speak about assets at an international conference. And there were people from all over Europe there, and I go in, and the lady on the desk says, oh yeah, you're from Scotland, says, there's some folk from a school in Scotland that want to talk to you. Okay. So I go over and I thought, what's all this about? I live in Barhead, and this is East Renfrewshire, the big shouter. And I thought, wait a minute, what are you guys doing here? And we got involved, and I was on stage with them and all this kind of stuff. And it struck me that this was a fantastic example of the assets thing in action. They had decided to help each other learn about how they could be in control, and help others learn how they could be in control, and help others and themselves discover abilities that they had. And it was a great experience, and I was particularly pleased that it was from my own home, not quite my hometown, but close enough, Barhead. So it's a great privilege. I was delighted when you won the award. And I tell people all over the world about the kind of things you do because you discovered this for yourselves. You realised that this was the way to change people, to change yourselves and to change others. And we've got to spread it. We've got to spread the, create a virus, go viral about it, as they say, okay? So I've talked enough. I'm really positive about the whole thing, and I know because you're really positive, and it's the way to change Scotland. It's the way to transform young people across Scotland, this whole assets approach. So having said all that, it's my very great pleasure to present to you the Bruce McBrew Show, The Big Shouter.